Welcome to Amazon Legends, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became power sellers, also providers specializing in helping sellers, aggregators that acquire sellers, and former Amazonians will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here is your host, Nick Urison.
Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My next guest today is he had his teeth cut working for his father right out of college. And it was all about marketing different products, trying everything from email marketing to affiliate networks. So basically his dad said, go get business. I don't care how you do it. So he's tried all kinds of things. So he's naturally become a marketing person. And one day he came up with the idea to help brands. And of course, Amazon is at the time getting bigger. And so fast forward to today. Today, he's the CEO and founder of Velocity Sellers, a full service Amazon agency. And he's taken the reins and he's doing a great job and helping different sellers. When he's not working, he's someone who loves skiing and tennis. He's always physically active. And also he plays some online games. And in fact, we were discussing just before we started recording, he was skiing. And this is as we record in March. So he went skiing. So he's not always working. So with that, everybody, meet my guest, Jake Schwarzbaum. Welcome back to the show, Jake.
Hi, Nick. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, happy to have you. So, I remember our conversation to prepare for this recording. And I said to you, so tell me, what have you done before Velocity Sellers? And you said, well, nothing. I came right out of college and I started working with my dad. And the next thing is, here I am. So you have obviously made a lot of progress, tried different things, and became professional. But more important, you have taken the full responsibility of building this organization. And the most important thing in building an organization is the team. But having a team doesn't mean just you have warm bodies, right? So you always have to have, as the good book says, they're called Good to Great, you want to have the right people sitting in the right seats on the bus. So get the right people on the bus, but that's not enough. Put them in the right seats. So that's what we're going to talk about today. For Amazon sellers, this is a complex operation. So for my listeners, I want to tell you what we're going to discuss that you can take away and apply in your operation. Because if your team is not working, your operation is not going anywhere. And the team needs proper organization, proper tracking, performance, and everything else. So that's what we're going to cover today. And since it's a complex operation, it has a lot of moving parts. Jake is going to share with us the best way that he has found to organize the teams so that you can keep checks and balances and also get the cash coming in. So tell us, Jake, first of all, give us the blueprint of what I call them the functions, not necessarily individual positions, but functions. What are some things that need to be on the table as for a seller, for the owner to say, okay, these are the kinds of things that need to have someone looking out for it and working on it?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, my dad, Nathan, may take issue with saying that I came up with the idea. We have this debate all the time about who actually came up with the idea. So I just want to give him credit. It was definitely an idea we both came up with, and we both saw the potential in the Amazon market. And I also want to give him credit for building this alongside me. And I also want to say that I totally agree with your assessment that the people are such an important part of the organization. And every time that we found an important person that's still with us today, it took us to the next level. But like you said, also, it's the people, but also the function, right? So just trying to understand where These people that we brought in that were brilliant, they have amazing experience, are extremely ambitious or whatever, their great qualities are. Trying to understand, where they fit into the organization, and building around them, as it's a challenge, but that's the thing that makes the business grow. So the first thing I'd like to say is, always try to identify who those people are, who, are definitely special. Like, oh, talk to people in the industry. And when you find that person, just hold on to them, build that relationship, have a lot of integrity with that relationship. And as long as you build a good partnership with that person, you will, learn to work with them and grow. And, you'll push each other, and you can't do it alone, right? When you're building these teams. But to get into more specifics, in terms of Amazon, obviously, we've gone through different iterations of how we organize the business. When we were a smaller company, we pretty much just had an Amazon expert, and PPC, right? For us, PPC was always a specific skill set from day one. It was always clear. We had writers, we would outsource that here and there, especially in the beginning when we were really lean and mean. Not that we're not, lean now and try to be efficient, which I'll get to later. But we had someone that was just responsible for everything on Amazon and then PPC. As we started to grow, we started to understand what it was, that there are just so many different skill sets, and levels of expertise in different areas of Amazon. You can say that about any business, any marketing business, or any kind of business, but Amazon is so specific, and you may not know that until you start to get into it. I'm sure a lot of your listeners know this, but like the way you have to deal with this specific platform and why we, created a business, you needed to approach it in such a specific way, that the more that we were able to diversify the roles and find things, that were great in very specific things, the better, we were able to accomplish our goals and build like lasting partnerships with our clients. So, again, we had an account manager. That was the name of the position. And one of the big changes we made over the last few years, is we separated that position into two roles. One of them was a brand manager, which is focused on growth strategy, essentially being the expert, and a project manager, someone who is focused on making sure that things get done, right? Making sure that you're coordinating with all the different team members. The brand manager being one of those team members, and one of the tools in their arsenal, and just being able to separate that out, letting the brand managers focusing on working with the clients, keeping up to date with being Amazon experts, finding strategies and making sure that they're analyzing the data and doing everything that's necessary to grow in such a competitive market, really let us get to the next level. We also, just to kind of give you a high level overview of all of our departments and how we work. So we have the brand manager, the project manager, and the functions that they serve. We also have a dedicated logistics department, which focuses on inventory management. Back when we were smaller, the account manager did a lot of the logistics. And, you may be able to find someone that has that skill set, but it's a very specific and very complex thing to be able to, especially at an agency where you're dealing with all sorts of business, everything from the supply chain, to just getting things just in time for Amazon. And I'm sure some of your listeners know about the latest changes that are happening on inventory at Amazon. So you have a logistics department. You have customer service, someone that just deals with the customers, making sure you're responding as quickly as possible within 24 hours. You have advertising, of course. That's just a specific skill set. Really important that they keep up to date with all of the latest things that are happening on that platform and communicate with the brand manager and even logistics, to make sure that, if you're running out of stock, you got to pull back on ads. And we also have the graphics department. So those that are doing graphic design, videos, anything kind of visual content, and the written content. And then behind all of that, we also have a team of administrative assistants and specialists with data specialists that are doing a lot of the work, a lot of the account management aspects, a lot of the reporting, data upload, flat files, case management, and obviously I can keep going on, but that's like kind of the main structure of the business. And obviously there's things on our other side of the thing, like marketing and bookkeeping and all that stuff. But in terms of operations, that's the main outline.
Okay. Obviously, you were talking as an agency, but this is really at a scale. So, but the core operation doesn't change. You just handle more work with this structure, but the structure doesn't change when you have only one seller account, which is really for sellers, that's all they care about, their seller account. So, but the structure stays the same, except that they just have their work to do. So just to clarify a little bit and then make it a little bit more personalized, so to speak. So brand manager's job is to know the competition, the keywords, and how they fit into the marketplace, right? In terms of how they appear, how the listings appear, all their collateral stuff with the content, the A plus, the pictures and the videos. Is it in line with what the brand stands for? And also, how does it compete with others, right? Is that pretty much what the brand manager does?
Yeah, they are the ones that should know the platform most comprehensively, right? They should really know. They're not necessarily going to be as knowledgeable on the specifics of the logistics as that department, but they need to understand how it all comes together and what activities the businesses can take to bring an ROI. Which ones are going to drive growth on in the company, right?
Okay.
And that can change because that's year to year things change on this platform. So being able to keep up with that is enormously important.
Yeah. So this is actually what I call channel manager, because I presumably whatever the brand you have is selling through multiple channels at some point. You may start on Amazon, but then you may add your website, any other marketplace. Now there are many. I just got an email the other day, and there's another new marketplace opening up. So there's all these marketplaces. So really, there could be different people for each channel responsible for the channel's performance. But in this case, if the brand is just selling through Amazon, then brand manager and channel manager pretty much would be the same person, right? So they know how much money was made, the profits, ACOSs, and all the performance of the brand on the marketplace. The brand manager knows. Okay. The next one that you said right from the get-go was PPC. So PPC was a different operation. So obviously it's a lot more intense, numbers driven, and there's a lot of processes. So that's a different function. So my question to you before we add any more, I guess for a seller, the owner is the brand manager, right? At the beginning, that's their business.
Right.
So what is better, to outsource PPC or learn it yourself, do it yourself, or hire someone to run it for you?
That is a great question. I will try to leave my bias at the door for now. Because obviously, for me, it makes sense to bring on someone that knows what they're doing. Because like I said in the beginning, that it is such a specific skill set, and the fact that our PPC team or any team that focuses specifically on Amazon PPC is going to have experienced so many you know different situations, and had to understand how to scale businesses at different levels, how to deal with different barriers, suppressions, whatever. Like, they've dealt with it, right? So there is an advantage to either hiring out, outsourcing the PPC, which is obviously going to be the more cost effective option than bringing someone in house. Obviously, if you bring someone in house, then you have that person and they're dedicated to you. So that's just, in my opinion, a financial decision that you have to make depending on the size of your business. I think it's nice to have someone dedicated, but then that's usually what their skill set is, and it might be where it ends too, right? If it's a dedicated PPC person, so you have to decide if you need a full time Amazon PPC person. In terms of learning it yourself, I always think that it's good to learn yourself, and you may want to bring that on yourself. You might struggle, or you're going to go through your learning curve. You may spend inefficiently. You might have wasted spend. You might not know how to track that, but it is obviously beneficial to learn this yourself. But in terms of how Amazon works, the launch period is probably the most crucial time to get it right when you're going on Amazon. So, do you really want to spend that time learning the platform, and potentially wasting money and opportunity when the market moves so fast? I mean, assuming, you're new to market or the market's already competitive, the market's most likely just going to get more competitive from there. I guess my answer is I would just try to get the expertise in your business as quickly as possible, however that can be.
Okay. So when we say, do you want to learn it yourself? Again, this is the brand manager, right? We're referring to the brand
Right.
manager at the beginning, the owner. So bottom line, what I'm hearing from you is, especially for launch, definitely go with a professional who knows what he's doing so that you get to launch properly and get the most out of your honeymoon period and rank up on keywords and then generate sales and get proper ROI and everything else. But at the same time, my experience is, if you don't know anything about Amazon PPC, you don't really understand the conversations, because there will be recommendations coming out from the discussion of, how much sponsored brands, how much sponsored brand campaigns, how much sponsored brand video campaigns, how much sponsored display campaigns would help in your case. Then you need to be able to have a meaningful conversation with the person running it. If you just leave it to them and say, okay, just get me the sales, that's not going to work. They also need your direction. So I think that every brand manager, every owner needs to understand intimately different kind of campaigns that Amazon has, and what purpose each campaign serves, and what kind of return therefore you should expect. And so therefore, this is something that will help you understand how the PPC person is performing. What do you think? Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's so many resources online about how to run advertising, free resources, paid resources. So I would always recommend that anyone could be educated on how Amazon advertising works, so that even if you go with someone like us, or you outsource advertising, you can speak intelligently and understand what is happening within the account. A lot of the times we're discussing, explaining ACOS or tacos, or how different forms of advertising on Amazon work, and the advantages and disadvantages. And if we can get past all of that already and just have a conversation about, or do we want to be aggressive? Do you want to do branding campaigns? Do you want to do defensive? Like, do you know what that means? So I think that you should definitely try to be as educated as possible. I think it's definitely on you to be educated possible in any parts of business you're going to be investing in outsourcing. As a business owner myself, it's you're managing so many different things, right? So I understand the challenge, but something like PPC, where you're spending your money for a direct return, right? It's such a financial investment, right? It's worth knowing where your money's going and if it's being spent properly. And if it's achieving your goals, which could be different. Like, you have to understand, you have to decide what your goals are too, right? Are you
Right.
trying to grow your top line revenue? Are you trying to have a profitable growth? Are you want to focus on your top set of SKUs, or whatever it is? So yeah, I agree.
Okay, so the golden question is, how do you find such a person? When I say how do you find, I don't mean where you find them. What I mean is, what is it that you are asking them to see if this is the right person or not? What are the qualifications? What are the expectations that they need to meet? So give us
Yeah.
that, how to structure that relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting question for me to answer in particular, because of the nature of our business and the fact that we do hire a lot of people, right? We're hiring in Amazon more than any other type of business, probably. People who have that expertise, who are going to be servicing our clients. So we have to get it right. And it can be challenging because there's two sides of it, I think. One is their level of knowledge and their ability to execute, right? And I think those sometimes those two things, you might have one but not the other. So, in terms of knowledge, I think that might be a little bit more straightforward. Ask them specific questions about. I mean, if you don't have that Amazon knowledge yourself, you're going to have to do some research. But ask them, very specific questions about how the platform works. Even give them a test potentially. Ask them to show something that they've done or speak to their experience, and say, like, what did you do in this situation? If this happens, what is the proper thing for you to do? So you have to really poke and really test their knowledge, to see if they have it. And, their experience is really important to look at as well. You can have a really smart person who knows PPC, but if they haven't done it before extensively and they don't have a diversity of experiences, maybe they'd be okay, but I guess you'll have to see. You won't have that assurance. And now in terms of execution, that's a little bit more challenging. And I think that anyone who hires can agree with this. Um, you know, Trying to determine if they have the right temperament, personality to manage an account day in and day out. Are they going to be communicating with you? What kind of reporting do they have? How long did they stay at their previous positions? Or if you're outsourcing to an agency, talk about the other clients that they've worked with. Talk about, like, what kind of relationships have they built with them? Can you get a reference? Actually, references are really important for us as well. So I wouldn't say there's one thing in particular that you need to look for, but I think one thing I can say is that you could have, it's very easy to have high level surface knowledge of Amazon, but not be able to execute. And I would just look out for that, right? I would just make sure that these people are the real deal and they have proof to kind of show that.
Yeah, I mean, you put under execution two things that I care about most. So there is a funny saying: there are three questions in a job interview that you must ask. I read this somewhere and it gave me a chuckle, and it's so true. And in the article, it says these three questions are extremely important. And usually people ask two out of these three, and they neglect to ask the third one. And that's where things go wrong. So the questions are this: do you have the knowledge to do the job? So you ask questions about understanding the knowledge. Do you have the experience to do this job? Somebody may have read a lot of material, but they never actually done it. So tell me about, where did you do this? Where did you do that? So do you have the experience? So when you hear from somebody that they have the knowledge and they have the experience, you say, great, I've got a great guy. You are hired, right? What's the third question? The third question is, will you do the job? Which is the attitude. Because
Yeah.
everything, and this is another thing that in my business organization, we have a saying that you hire for knowledge and experience and you fire for attitude. So people, they show up, great resume in terms of knowledge, great set of skills, experience, and they show up for work one day 15 minutes late, next day half an hour late, and then somebody is sick, they took the day off, or they have an attitude problem, they don't get along. So what's the difference, right, of having somebody? I call that getting half pregnant. You think you've got somebody,
Yeah.
and it's a great person, but actually you've got nobody. The person is not delivering. So, and you put that under execution, and of course execution takes the skills, actually hands-on experience of doing it, as well as the attitude. So how do you check the attitude? That's because everybody has their best behavior, right? So how do you check the attitude of the person?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. One thing I would say is, and I've learned from this mistake several times, is to trust your instincts, right? If someone misses an interview and they have a convenient excuse, I mean, obviously I've allowed excuses or whatever, there are things that can happen, but sometimes you're like, well, that doesn't seem right. But you go, oh, we need someone right now for this, and it's probably going to be okay. Or if they, lack something is off, and maybe you even can't put your finger about it on it, and you don't like the way that they're communicating, or they're coming off wrong, and you go, oh, but like I can't describe it necessarily. Most of the time, like those instincts have been correct, and even when we didn't commit to those instincts, and we look back and we said, like we got to learn from this mistake
Yeah.
and know that, like, be patient, find the right person that for you. And I would say, that's something that I've had personal experience with. But it's a tricky thing to know if someone can execute, I gotta say. You have to really just have um, good experience, interviewing them. And again, I think getting the referrals is extremely important, as I said, because if they've maintained relationships with either previous employers, or if they're the agency with their clients and they have good things to say, that has shown that they have executed. So I think it's a myriad of things. It's not just one thing, but that's something that you should have in your mind as you're making your decision.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So these three questions definitely need answers before you make the final hiring decision. So let me tell you what I have had in my past. So, I mean, hiring is everything. At the end of the day, it's hiring the right person is key to your success. You hire the wrong person, you not only wasted money, but you also wasted time. And not to mention, it may even give you trouble. So, depending on who you're getting. So,
Yep.
there is an interview technique called top grading. Have you heard of it?
I have not. No, I'm interested to hear though. I can always use more techniques.
Okay, so top grading, uh, look it up. You'll see a lot of material. It was created by two guys, and it follows this methodology called, they call it CID, stands for chronological in-depth interview. Yeah, chronological in-depth interview. So what it does is it completely covers the entire history of the person, starting from where they grew up. And what you are doing in the interview is asking the 5 questions, same questions for every single job that they held. But what happens is when you start from, tell me, where did you grow up? They start telling you some of their experiences. And what happens is, I actually did this. I was looking for a chief operating officer, and somebody came, applied for the job. And I asked, so tell me, where did you go to school and blah, blah. And one of the questions for the early life is, did you have any extracurricular activities? Did you play sports? And she said, yeah, I was the vice president of this club that we created. And then something else, yes, I was the second in charge of this. And then I was the vice president of something else. And I said, I'm seeing a pattern here. You're very accomplished and always the second in charge. She said, that's what I'm comfortable with. So this is all early stuff. And then when you start talking about the job, you ask, okay, what were you hired to do? Tell me about the team. Tell me about some of your accomplishments. And then when you ask accomplishments, tell me some of the things that you could have done better back then. You don't say weakness. You could have done better back then. And so you take note of these, and then you deliberately take notes. And then you say, okay, who did you work for? Who did you report to? And then you say, what was he like to work with or work for? then the moment that you put that question like that, they immediately start, telling you stuff that,
Right.
because by the way, by this time, there's some time passed, so their guard is down, so it becomes a real conversation that you're having with the person. And by the time you get to their third or fourth job, they're completely having an open conversation with you. And they will tell you things like, oh my God, I hated working for that company. That guy was terrible. They start bad mouthing people. And then you ask, okay, so if we call him and ask him what some of your strengths, some of the things you could have done better back then, what do you think he would say? And this is, they call it TORC, TORC, threat of reference check. So you because you're telling them, so we're gonna, what was his name? Do you have his cell phone number? So you like make a note. And then so what would he say about some of the things that you've done really well? And so when you do this, I can tell you, Jake, I was hiring this guy to be my distribution, old process person. And process person, you have to follow fulfillment. And by the end of the interview, he was telling me, oh my God, I just need something to put myself through law school. I hate process, I hate routine.
Oh my God.
He came to the job
I
interview.
got to check out this technique because I mean, I'm definitely going to look into this. It sounds really good. I'm effectively trying to do the same thing that you're describing, but maybe not in as structured of a way. You're not trying to ask yes or no questions, right? You're not just saying, "Are you good at
No,
this?"
no,
Yes. You're
no.
trying to talk through, and try to understand who they are through the questioning. And it's not as simple as, are you able to do this? Yes or no. So
No.
I'm definitely going to look into this technique because I think it accomplishes that really well based off what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's the same questions. What were you hired to do? What was the team and his role and some accomplishments as well as flops, and then the person he worked for, and there's one more I forget. But here is the trick. Before you do the interview, what you do is you create categories for scoring. So you're scoring on, let's say, communication, you're scoring on knowledge, you're scoring on analytics, experience. So you create these 6, 7, 8, 9 different categories. And then as he gives his answers, you record them, of course, you make notes, but you assign a score. Because when you have 8, 9, 10 people applying for the same position, how do you cannot compare words, but you can definitely compare numbers. So you create a scorecard ahead of the interview, and then that scorecard applies to every single applicant. And then you're asking the same questions and scoring in the same way. And of course, scoring is coming from you. It's subjective, but it's you applying to everybody. So very quickly you develop a style and then you go with it. So the other thing that I do hiring is I use these personality assessments. So from there, you can see if the person is an introvert, extrovert, positive, negative, team oriented, decision making capabilities, and things, a quick learner, good with numbers, good with words. So these are all traits that by taking this assessment, you can tell very quickly that it's something. I mean, I did not want this conversation to be about hiring, but as you know, hiring is the most important. You hire the right person,
Yeah.
you're done.
Hiring, yes, is extremely important. Training also important, right? I think it's just about getting the right people in and then preparing them correctly, giving them the right systems to work within. It's about, everything from the beginning of finding the right person to making sure that they have what they need to execute properly, right?
Yeah.
And having systems for tracking, systems for accountability, for rewarding success and dedication. And obviously I can get into all that, but we've obviously learned how to implement a lot of processes and systems to incentivize good performance and not only that, I think what also is important is to have a good culture. I mean, this may just apply to companies in general and not just, how you're hiring for Amazon. And, but, you want to be able to um, provide a strong framework to do good work, not through threat of punishment or anything like that, but because, you know, it's very clear what you need to do, and there's a clear reason for why you're doing the things you need to do, and we're all collaborating in a team that is, obviously you want to take your work seriously, but you also want to, especially if you're a remote company like us, you need to have some sort of culture that you're fostering, that you feel like you can depend on each other, and there isn't any kind of animosity between people, and like this, it's a collaborative culture, right? So there's a lot of things that go into making a good team, which we can go on for a long time about that, but I also, I just want to talk about the different elements as well, right? It's than
Yeah.
just finding the right person.
I have a question for my listeners. Are you experiencing cash flow challenges with your Amazon business? Well, silly question. Who is not, right? So let me introduce you to Viably, a unique solution tailored for Amazon sellers and e-commerce enterprises. By connecting your Seller Central or Shopify account, you can promptly access funding along with a variety of financial tools, all for a flat fee. It's as simple as that. And for my listeners, they are offering an extra $1,500 in funding for eligible applications. Start your quick and easy application today at runviably.com/legends. And that's runviably.com/legends. So, okay, culture is a big discussion. Yeah, every organization. So they say that every company has a culture, either by design or by default. So if you don't design it, you're gonna inherit whoever brings whatever culture, and then it becomes not necessarily a very stable environment. So it's a huge discussion, but you've got to have your company
You'll have to have
values.
me back on to talk about it if you want.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Trust me, this is a deep, deep subject. How to build it, how to maintain it, and it's we'll definitely have a separate time. So far we covered the brand manager slash owner. We covered the PPC. We kind of had a general guideline, so to speak, about how to find the right people. So I also heard you mention the logistics person. What are the functions of the logistics person? It's of course, we're talking FBA shipment, FBM shipment. So give us your take on that slightly.
So this could actually vary pretty greatly depending on the needs of the client. If someone is doing purely FBM, fulfilled by merchant, there may not be much need for us to get super involved in logistics. If you're doing FBA, or you're doing both, or you're doing vendor central sometimes, essentially the main function is to get inventory into Amazon at the proper pace and to overcome any barriers to doing so. Coordinating with your warehouse, coordinate or your 3PL, um, making sure that there are no issues upon receiving or pickup, um, and projecting out as well sales growth, since we're getting in there, in our particular case, and I'm sure for your listeners as well, they're looking to grow their business. How do you scale all of that? Make sure that you're not running out of inventory, which is going to become increasingly more important with these changes, and also increasingly important not to overstock your inventory, because Amazon is going to be punishing that more. At a base level, they do that, but we also do get involved in supply chain. We get involved in, coordinating international shipping into Amazon directly. Um, and it's kind of anything that involves, it's kind of hard to kind of put your finger on it. It is, we have actually, we're developing lots of different programs under this. But it's anything that involves getting the product into Amazon and getting it ready. So it could be pretty simple or it can be pretty complex depending on the business.
So, okay, there's two pieces of this puzzle about logistics. One is the physical handling, the requirements, the guidelines, the FBA prep, and all that stuff, right? So there's all the physical elements of it. And the second piece is the replenishment, getting enough inventory, making sure. So I was recording with another guest, and he said something. He said, if you understock, you run out of inventory. If you overstock, you run out of cash. It's so clear. So whose job is it to know how many pieces to keep in stock? Because you have, first of all, you have inventory at Amazon, inventory in the warehouse, and then inventory potentially on order in production pipeline. So you have three different things that you need to be watching based on your sales velocity.
And inventory that is currently in transit as well, which can
Right,
sometimes be missed. Yes, it's kind of an understated, service or department, because it's not sexy, so to speak, sometimes, but it's just so crucial. It's kind of the linchpin of everything if it's not executed properly. And, you're dealing with stranded inventory, you're dealing with commingled inventory, you're dealing with a lot of different things. But we ourselves had to develop our own, one thing I would recommend just that I hadn't mentioned to this point is if you can develop your own API connection into Amazon's systems, I would recommend you start to build some system for yourself. We have our own system. So if you're working with us, we have that system. But the reason is because in order to do some things properly, you want to be able to pull on that data. We use Power BI, and we are able to track inventory that's coming in, inventory that's shipping, and inventory at Amazon. And it's also extremely important to coordinate logistics with the other departments because I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. If you're going to be doing an aggressive advertising campaign, logistics needs to know that. If you're going to be discounting with coupons, they need to know. If you're going to be discontinuing your product or anything like that, they need to be extremely aware of what's going on. Because if you make a mistake in this area, you're going to feel the consequences and it's going to affect everything. So, I would get if you're working with someone who's a numbers guy, someone who's fastidious, organized, like this is extremely, it's gonna be extremely technical. It's might be a little simpler with a smaller catalog. But when you start to get to bigger companies or bigger catalogs, it can get extremely complex to wrap your head around.
So what I'm hearing from you is the replenishment is not a function of the logistics. Replenishment, or we're talking about calculations. That's the job of someone who has ownership of the numbers, the analytics, and everything else. But also that needs to be in coordination with PPC potentially, and also any promotions, planned promotions, because the immediate consequences you run out of stock, right?
Logistics need to know everything that's going on in the account, basically, right? If you're finding individuals or building teams that are segregated based off of their skill set and their departments, you can quickly find that they're not talking to each other, not coordinating. We didn't get too much into this, but they should all be coordinating, and you should have a system for coordinating, whether that's through a task management system or, communication like Slack. Set up something where everyone knows what's going on and it's all kind of centrally located for us as a specific client, but for you, it should just be for your business, for a seller, that is.
So I want to ask you something. So we've experienced a situation and then we made a rule and based on a recommendation that I made. So what happens is typically you are hiring people remote. So especially in tech world, nobody's going to the office anymore like it used to be the norm, no longer the case. So you are hiring people to work remotely, you are hiring offshore, so people are all over. So I definitely favor the idea of Slack. I use Slack myself. So you need something and you can utilize the channels that Slack offers so that teams can collaborate. But what was happening was, so it's the same organization. You've got a PPC person, and you've got someone who works on the content, and then also someone who produces the whether it's the visuals, the images or the videos or whatever, it's somebody different. So we had three different people. So what was going on was PPC was wasting money, because what happened was, this past shopping season, we're running the campaign and PPC is doing well. I mean, as far as the performance, ACOS and TACOS, everything is good, but it could be better. And also you're looking at the leakage. So what we found was, the person, whoever that was, and that position was not defined clearly, that function was left orphan. Nobody took ownership of issuing coupons, those click coupons. As a result, what happened was, we ran the campaigns and the competition ran product display ads on our page and offered coupon. Guess what happened? All the traffic we draw, I don't want to say all, but a great percentage of the traffic we draw through sponsored product ads to our listing pages got diverted by the competition because they offered a coupon. And,
Yes.
and our listing didn't have a coupon.
Who was responsible for that? Who was responsible for putting the coupon?
Thank you. Perfect question. So what happened was, first of all, this is a client of ours, PPC only. So we are only managing PPC. It's not our job to issue a coupon. We don't
Right.
even have access. So what happened was, after this whole thing happened, I went back and I said, listen, we need to change the organizational structure here. So now what we have is, PPC is the driver of content. That means titles, bullets, A+, you name it. Not necessarily hands-on production of them, but has the authority to call for new picture, new video, new whatever. And then at the same time, there is one party that has full authority on changing the content, requiring more visuals, and also issuing coupons and running any campaign that's associated with coupons. For example, brand tailored promotions. So all that is now centralized in one party, and that's the PPC team that drives, and PPC team makes sure that it's done. Otherwise, they don't do whatever they're planning to do. So that kind of organization is, of course, after the whole thing happened, I thought this only makes sense. So what do you think?
Yeah, I would say that our organization is structured a bit differently. But the important thing is that it is clearly defined who is responsible for what, right? And who is accountable for even the smallest thing. Because, in the case of your situation, it wasn't clear who was supposed to put in that coupon, correct? And so, I think that ensuring for us, it's more the brand management team that is responsible for, making the strategic decisions on the account. And they work obviously with the PPC team. That's really important. And then their input is really important. But the accountability for the success of the account is on the brand manager, right? So we have to make that extremely clear to them. That is what we expect. For the project manager, right? They have different responsibilities. Their responsibilities is that the graphic designer, the graphics get created and it gets given to the client, right? Or these messages are responded to the client. Like, they have different responsibilities. So just having distinct roles and being extremely clear on what they are has been extremely important, and that there's not too much overlap. It's nice when people can jump in and work together, but we find it relieves the pressure when you make it clear, even if it sounds like we're adding more work to someone, if we can make it clear what we expect of them to do. So and building process behind that, building an SOP, training with that, making sure it's like central to what their daily functions are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this, what happens, who's going to do what, but for them to do it all together in coordination with each other, that's the problem. And that's not, doesn't always work. It's the right hand, left hand situation.
It's a challenge always. It's not always, rainbows and sunshine. And we're dealing with human beings, and we're dealing with processes that aren't always perfect the first time around. But it's important to, really chip away at it, identify why did this thing fall through the cracks, have a system for improving your processes. We have process discussions every week. We have a whole system for improving on them, for getting feedback. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree.
Yeah. And another thing, Jake, we found was, I guess you could say that's the PPC team, but it really could be somebody else who is part of that team. All this work has to be done in coordination with the analytics. For example, search query performance, product opportunity explorer, and the business reports. Not only the advertising reports everybody is using all the time, but how do the advertising reports fit into the search query performance and the business reports? What about the conversion rates?
Brand analytics, which have been really great to see recently, have been helping a lot of decision making. Yeah.
We've done several episodes dissecting the search query performance, and that's like a gold mine, you can see. But more important, putting everything together, because search query performance under brand analytics, it shows the complete picture. Advertising shows the paid programs. When you put the two together and see where you're spending your money and where you're getting business without even spending money, and therefore you should spend some money, kind of decisions are all to do with that central unit. Really, it's a central unit. It's the central to the success of the operation. It's the numbers coming together with the content and the paid campaigns all working together is key, so that you get the most out of it. I mean, it's always work in progress, of course. As Amazon throws these new situations at you, you
Yeah.
have to adjust, right?
I mean, you have AI now, and like things are changing.
Oh, yeah.
They're changing to Rufus. I mean, like always going to be a changing battle. So you have to understand your numbers. You have to understand how Amazon's working. It's not all in a bubble, right? You have to understand what's happening in the market. You need market research tools. What are your competitors doing? Is it expanding? Did your category just explode with new products? Like, this all is impacting your decisions and how you're going to, do on the platform. So, you need to do data analysis and have dedicated resources to that, whoever that may be in your organization.
Yeah. So outside this, obviously, there's content. Content is, per our discussion, is all part of the full operation. That leaves the finances. So what about the financial performance? Because I had one guest on the show. He said so rightly. He said, people understand the top of the P&L, but they don't really understand the bottom of the P&L, and that's where things go wrong, right? So who is in charge of the overall financial performance?
Yeah, so we use a lot of tools to track financial performance, and we've actually kind of shifted tools over the years just because it's such an important thing to track. Like I said, we actually use an API connection, and we create our own custom reports that are not very pretty sometimes because it's kind of pretty rough looking. But we're able to really have every single data point that Amazon gives us and customize any report in any way we want. And we're also just, for interest's sake, we're able to break that into our different teams, how we have it organized. We're able to look at on a per client basis, on a per brand basis, and all that. So being able to set up your tools correctly and the data correctly that you can even analyze it is extremely important. Um, so we use things like enterprise level of Jungle Scout called Jungle Scout Cobalt with custom dashboards. We've used software like Seller Board, which is actually more designed for individual sellers, but I recommend it. So it's I would say we're responsible for the performance of the business, but a lot of it comes in working with the client in our case. And maybe for your seller's case, it's just kind of talking internally with your team about what your goals are. If they're saying, hey, like put the pedal to the metal on advertising because we want to grow, yeah, if obviously profitability might not be their current priority. So we're going to focus on top line, and that's the number we're going to be looking at, right? In terms of success. So we're responsible for executing on whatever the goals are for the client. But you as a seller, you're responsible for deciding what it is that you are looking to accomplish. And it's not always, sometimes it's give or take. Sometimes it's a zero sum game, right? It's like you're you know, you're going to have to invest. You're in a competitive category. You're going to have to invest a lot of money. You have to do giveaways, Vine. You're going to have to do advertising. Then you're going to pull back. Whatever your strategy is, you have to come to an agreement and at least have a strategy so that you know what numbers you should be looking at, right? And we can, in our case, we support them with that, but it comes from knowing what your goals are in business.
Yeah. So ultimately, what I'm hearing is really, as a seller, you need to know your financials in terms of how they are structured so that when you ask somebody to drive sales, it's going to come at a cost. So somebody said something to me, one of my guests, he said, you have building your advertising operation is like a triangle. It says on one side, you have sales. The other side, you have profits. And the last one is time. So he says, this model, you can't get all three. You have to decide which ones you want. So if you want sales and profits, it's going to take you a long time. If you want sales and you want to do it quickly, you're not going to have profits.
Can I steal that one? That's a good one. I can see that in being in a triangle visualization. So I totally agree with that. Uh, and coming from an agency, communicating our experience with that triangle as you describe it, we try to be as clear as possible. That you got to have to make some decisions. And again, yeah, if you want both of those things, if you want to be profitable and you want to grow, then you're going to have to be patient, because essentially you're not playing the game that others are playing on the platform, which is they're not making profit, a lot of these people on the platform, at least to start or for a long time. And your Amazon's able to get away with that because of how much volume they're able to drive, and they essentially they've built the cost of acquisition of a customer right into their pricing. So Amazon's a tricky business, and you just make sure that you know your numbers, make sure that you understand, if you're not profitable, that it's for the right reasons at least, and you're not wasting money on inventory placement or wasted spend on advertising, or you make sure you're not just making mistakes, right? You don't want to just be wasting money, but at a certain point, you may be, if your goal is to take over the market, you're going to have to be as aggressive as your competitor or more. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, and also this model is a very simple model where you say, okay, which one of these three I don't care about? Which one is not important? Or which one of the two do I want to have? And this can change over time. Like, for example, for launch, you don't care about profit, right? So all you want is velocity coming in every day because you wanna get capitalized on that honeymoon period. But after that, That's not sustainable. So after your launch period is over, then profit comes into play. And then at that point, your priorities shift. So it's a good model. Anyway, there's all different aspects of it. So you and I can go on forever.
I have more in my head that I didn't even say, but I know that we're coming up on time. I don't want to get started on a whole other topic, but yeah, social media and external traffic, and there's a lot of factors that came to my mind. You need to stay on the cutting edge on top of all the things we just talked about. So, we didn't even get to those topics, but yeah.
That's exactly why people should reach out, and then you can make recommendations and then help them out. So this is where we get to know my guests more intimately. Some of my guests call it the therapy session.
Free therapy. I mean, that's pretty nice these days, right?
Well,
is it covered by insurance?
No, the reason why this kind of started totally by coincidence, because what happened was when I started the whole podcast, it was about business, about Amazon, blah, blah. But really, whether you are an Amazon seller or you're running an agency or whatever, we are entrepreneurs, right? That's what is in common for all of us. And as soon as you start talking entrepreneurs, everything is different. It's like I always say, entrepreneurs are like comedians. When comedians look at what's going on around them, and they have a totally different perspective, and they make fun of it. And entrepreneurs are always looking for opportunities and something that they can find and then and innovate and also this tremendous emotional resilience, because it's always ups and downs and ups and downs. They almost look for it, and this risk, looking for risk and taking risk and blah blah. So, and I thought, we should also cover this, and then ultimately it comes down to the early years of the person, because you don't know you're going to be an entrepreneur. When you are a kid, maybe you're going to be a surgeon, maybe you're going to be a lawyer or whatever. So, but there are those early signs. So I started asking some questions, and it became kind of the norm. So, so I ask everybody. So tell me first, where did you grow up, and where did you go to school, and more important, when was the first time that you remember as a kid that was entrepreneurial?
Well, I grew up on Long Island, New York. You can't say in when you're talking about Long Island. So I grew up on Long Island, and eventually went to school in New York City, NYU, which I'll get to in a second. But the first time that I was entrepreneurial, I'm trying to think. I mean, I might have taken a little bit of an indirect path because I was a pretty creative person. I actually NYU, I studied film and television. That was my major. So I spent a lot of time creating and doing things in creative fields, creating videos, and even writing, editing. I just loved being able to create things. And as I was going through school at NYU, which is an amazing program, uh, I found myself trying to understand what is creativity. Uh, and I think I started to broaden my understanding of what creativity is, right? I knew I was a creative person and I wanted to create, right? But I think I assigned that to something that was artistic. And as I started to see this as my life, I was like, this is not really kind of what I want to do. I want to like create something big. Like I want to own it. I want to I want to feel it, like, and have it tangible. Um, and it wasn't till really after I graduated and I was working with my dad, and we were working on his business and email marketing, when he brought up the idea. I just was like floating around because I was like, I don't know. I don't think I want to be in this field. Like I worked in Hollywood for a little bit. I just, briefly, I worked, at these productions in New York through school. And, I found that what I really wanted to do, what he brought up the idea of creating an agency or something like that, and something just clicked in me, and I was like, oh my god, absolutely, like I wanna run a business. I like absolutely knew in that moment that I was gonna do that, and I was never gonna do anything else. And like especially once I got started through, like you said, through all the ups and downs, even through the downs, even through the challenging points, I would always tell myself like, would I want to be doing anything else? No, there was like it was not even a question. Even if things went terribly at this point, I would start all over again and do it again or something different, but I would do something, with my skill set and so maybe, I didn't have a understanding until a little bit later. Once it kind of clicked with me, it was extremely obvious.
First of all, when you are in a leadership role, so I did this workshop a while ago. Every leader has 6 traits. Every leader is an entrepreneur, a creator, competitor, producer, gets stuff done, team builder, and they call it stabilizer. Stabilizer is like the person that negotiates and things like that. So every leader has these 6 traits. Now, if you think about it, this is a model. It's a hexagon. So there
Yeah.
are 6 triangles inside this hexagon, and those are the individual traits. Of course, if you are perfect with all of them, you have a full hexagon. But nobody has full hexagon because you have more creative side. Some leaders are creative people, some leaders are very competitive, and some are very entrepreneurial and blah, blah. So you are a creator, clearly. But you also were an entrepreneur. It's two different things. What was it that suddenly you realized that I want to own, I want to run a business? What was the trigger?
I think when I was looking at my path in the creative fields, to me, it felt a bit limiting and that like I would have to go through step one, step two, and it was all kind of preordained, and like in a box, and it felt stifling. When the opportunity to start something came about, I mean, it just seems so limitless and like you can, as long as you can think of it, you can accomplish it. And it's only, it's under your own power, um, that you can achieve your goals. So, if you set your heights to, infinity, you can aim for that goal. Like nothing is really stopping you from doing that, right? And you just have to go sometimes on pure inertia, and pure will, and you know you have to understand that it's not a guarantee, as long as you can accept the risk and know that like as long as you have your faculties and your ambition and your knowledge and your support groups and as long as you have that, you are able to keep moving forward. And I think it was just that realization that like I'll do this as long as I need to do it to accomplish it. There's less constraints. There's no constraints really. It's only what you kind of create for yourself, right? So I would rather have that uncertainty, I suppose, but do something that I'm building, build something for myself, build something for my family, build something even for those that work for me as well, and just know that it's in my hands, and I can do with it what I will. Like that is, I think, empowering, and I couldn't go back to not having that level of freedom, even though it can kind of come with its own ball and chain sometimes, but
Oh, yeah.
but yeah.
You know what you're describing is being in charge of your own destiny. You don't listen to anybody. You know what entrepreneurs are called? Usually, we don't really have jobs. We have our business that we're building or whatever. And so we are not unemployed, we are unemployable.
Yeah, yeah.
Entrepreneurs
But
are
that's another good
unemployable.
point. That's another good point is like I think like I look at a lot of people in my business and I'm like I could not do what they're doing, right? It's actually very, like being really focused and so good at some of these
Yes.
things. Like I'm
Yeah.
like I'm good where I am. It's not, it's like I have a lot of respect for what everyone's doing in the company, but I feel like this is my place. Like, not that I'm better or anything, it's just what I'm good at, right? This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah.
I mean, really, this is always the case. I have never heard so far money being the driver. So in your case, also the same situation. You just wanted to be in charge of your own destiny. You didn't want anybody telling you what to do. And also, you didn't want any limits. Because I can see, like, as a creator, if you make a movie, I mean, I love movies, always talking movies, making movies, whatever. And at some point, you release the movie, it's done, right? It's the end.
Yeah.
But when you're building a business, it's constant challenge, constant opportunity, constant change that you're working on. And ultimately, your decisions are key, and how you drive it. So I can see. So that's like, it's a thrill. It's almost adrenaline. So you must, I mean, you can
Yeah.
really get
And I'm
high on it.
sure, I'm sure, any entrepreneurs and all entrepreneurs listening out there can relate to the situation where they, see a shiny object, right? And they're like, oh, I should chase after that, or I should adjust or pivot. And you're like, no, I have to stay disciplined. I have to focus on what we're good at and keep moving in it forward. Of course, you're going to adjust and pivot here and there, but that's almost a thrill in itself. It's like I stayed the course, you fought and you like stayed consistent and you like
Yeah,
did what
yeah,
you had to do. And like I think that takes a lot of discipline, and it's very satisfying when it works out. You've committed to something that's yours and it's grown, and just seeing the end result of that. So, um, there is a lot of thrill or satisfying elements to contradict the stress and the challenges that come with being the I guess the backbone of the organization, and having to solve a lot of the issues that come your way.
yeah. I mean, when it pays off, it doesn't matter. All the sadness, all the suffering, it doesn't matter. You don't even remember it. It's all about when it's all done, you deliver, you feel good about it. And also you make an impact. People make a living out of it. You enjoy working with them. You make an impact. So those people obviously appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to unpacking all of how it's impacted me over the years. I don't think I fully understand it yet, about like why I do it and like the benefits for me, and maybe in the future, give me another 10, 20 years, I'll look back and be like, okay, it was really, I'll understand it a little bit more, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and why it feels
You know
right.
what
Yeah.
happens for me, just sharing my own experience. When you're young, you're jumping around, doing things, you're going after so many different things, and then you kind of move faster and think less. You think afterwards, but as you get older, you slow down and you think you're more calculating and everything else. So, but what happens is there are certain moments in the life of an entrepreneur. And those moments are pivotal moments. But when those moments come and you take it, and with experience, you've been doing it long enough, you make a decision and you move on. And then the day ends. And then you go to bed or whatever, and then you get up in the morning, again, another day. But being able to reflect back on that pivotal moment and the decision that you made and what you went through making that decision, and really, uh,
I could totally relate to that,
it,
you
it
remember
is,
those moments, you remember those decisions. You're like, I was there when I made that decision, and oh my God, the impact that one decision made positively. And
yeah,
you can also look back and say, I wish I made that decision, or I wish I had done it sooner. When you get it right, and you like can see the impact that your influence on the company, and therefore people and money and all that, it's extremely empowering, and it kind of drives you forward, right, to make that next decision, because you
yeah.
have to. You can't just let it like float along. Otherwise you're not going to improve.
Yeah. So I mean, it's what I do now is every day at the end of the day, I reflect back on, okay, were there some of those, because you miss some of those moments. You miss because you're busy. And also it's second nature. You do those things, you move on. But maybe something you said with one of the team members or something, it was a significant conversation which changed their attitude or your attitude. Or so those little things that maybe extremely important, that it's a good idea to reflect back and what was it and what was it like, what was it that you felt and they felt, and then put that in the bank, because similar situations will occur. And when you draw from experience, say, okay, I had a similar situation, this is how I handled it, or I had a similar situation and I didn't handle it well, no, this time I should do whatever. So those are actually, that's the real experience that is now that you're building up.
Absolutely. And you got to learn from your mistakes. I call it stepping on the rake, because like I just feel like, I mean, you can't ignore the fact that you're making mistakes constantly, right? There's no playbook for what you're doing in a lot of cases, right? And everything is unique to you, and like it's just about how you deal with that and learn from it and move on. You can't just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And like as long as you just have to, keep a positive attitude and realize that like any time that you should have done something, well, now you'll know next time. And maybe you would have never figured that out if you hadn't made that mistake. Right. So, um, you have to just keep learning and you can't stay stagnant.
Yeah. Well, you are the actor in your own movie. So, Jake, tell us, how can people reach you? Give us your contact information.
You can go to velocitysellers.com. That's our website. You can submit a form on our website to talk. We also do free analysis. So we do like analysis of your business and look at the market. And that is free. We just want to understand who is a good partner, what is your potential. So if you can go on the website and just go to the form on there, you can email me directly at Jake, at velocitysellers.com. I'll email you back. We'll have a conversation if you want that analysis or if you just want to talk. That's great. We also have our own podcast called the Velocity Sellers Podcast. So you can just look that up on YouTube right now. And I think we're about 20 episodes in. And we're just less of this stuff and more of like the nitty gritty, talking about advertising, talking about brand protection, like whatever, very specific things. But, if we can get your support on that, that would be great because we just started. And yeah, I think that's about it. I think those would be good ways to reach out.
Yeah, great. I'm sure people will reach out, and we'll put your contact information on your episode page. So anybody who wants to reach out, they'll be able to get it there as well. Thank you, Jake. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate you having me.
Before I go, a quick reminder to say goodbye to your cash flow problems and claim your extra $1,500 when you qualify for $25,000 or more in funding. Go to www.runviably.com/legends and start your application today. Thank you. And this brings us to the end of another episode. And I'll see you on the next one.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the episode, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too.